G'day guys, Mac of the Outer Circle, and this is the last of the Legiones Astartes range reviews, the Alpha Legion. So, let's kick it off. As usual, we're going to go straight into helmets, and the Alpha Legion have a really nice set of original helmets. These ones featured some stylistic variations of the sort of beaky helmet, middle row and, upper middle row. And they were quite a nice look. I also like this sort of pseudo hoplite sort of look that some of them have, where it's almost like little plates of reinforcing on each side of the face and the nose piece that several of the helmets have. That's also another really good look, and I think my favourite out of all of them is this one, which has the sort of Alpha Legion A stylized into the face grille. That is a personal favourite piece, which I love using. So, on the whole, I think this is a top-notch helmet set, and one of the few times where I would say it's really nice to use throughout the army, multiple times. Alpha Legion can go one of two ways, I find. Either a ton of uniformity, where everyone is supposed to look identical, because you're playing into the everyone is the same, who's the leader type strategy, the meme factor. Or you can go quite stylistic with them and just be like, well, just because he's the fanciest looking guy, doesn't mean he's the sergeant, or maybe he's the sergeant today and someone else is tomorrow, and they're all just wearing different armor just to mess with your mind. There are many ways you can go about it, but this is one of those helmet sets I've used repeatedly and I think is gorgeous. The Remake helmet sets, I don't mind the sergeant's helmet where it has the sort of Hydra's crest and a little bit of scale going onto it, but on the whole, these are hot trash. They just don't scream Alpha Legion, just having that particular trim. And being isolated to the helmet and nowhere else on the miniatures is pretty boring. The closest they come to a good look is these ones off to the sides, and the Sergeant's helmet, where they've kind of brought back a little bit of that faceplate that's like a hoplite's helmet, like a Corinthian pattern helmet. But no, I think they missed the mark. They probably should have gone for something with scales, or, well, we'll talk about some other options later when we get to the units. Then we get to the Contempor Dreadnought, and the original Alpha Legion Contempor Dreadnought is one of the best, top 3 contender for sure. This is its poor cousin, who is so stylistic and so fancy on the torso, and now it has this bland, boring, flat body around it. It's just such a miss what they've done. You know, it's a crime against the hobby, removing the rest of the Dreadnought body from production in favour of this torso on the plastic kit. It's the worst of both worlds, because this is one of the most gorgeous models in the range, in the whole Horus Heresy range. The only ones that beat it in my mind are the Death Guard and World Eaters Contemptor Dreadnoughts. They're the only two above this one. So it's a real shame that it's just been, lost to time. Then we have the Headhunters. So to me, this is stylized helmets done right. The sort of fangs, top and bottom, with the sort of helmets almost inside the mouth, as it were, of the Hydra, or the snake, or whatever reptilian creature you want to prefer. This is what they should have done with the Alpha Legion helmet upgrades, especially with like the little targeters or little rangefinders on the sides of the helmets that they've included. They are another fantastic look. It's also very strange that there's only one picture of these guys on the website these days. There's not multiple pictures off to the side. They don't want to give you a 360 view. And these upgrades do not work with the new Mark 6 kits, which is kind of a shame, because I actually think these upgrades in particular would look gorgeous on the Mark 6 bodies. It would suit them so well. They have the shoulder pad design, and the use of these helmets would be perfect. As are these sort of Maximus pattern combi bolters. The over-under look that was first introduced on these models is, wow, that looks so much better than the side-by-side combi bolter. Yeah, why didn't they do this sooner? What a great look. I just love everything about this particular kit. I like the little bits of daggers and stuff that they have on there, and that little sort of armoured plate that's completely optional on the hip, with the extra sort of sword on it, or shroud bombs. That little tasset, I guess you can call it, it's not really a tasset, but we'll call it a tasset. That plate that hangs off the hip it's good because that's a detail you don't have to use, and you can save it up and use it on your characters and sergeants in other squads if you don't want to use it on these guys. If you want to give them just regular sort of pouches and grenades and stuff like that. So, another fantastic kit. Then we get into the Linnean Terminators. And look, forgive the paint job. This is clearly from someone's just army and they've just slapped it onto the website. And that's why you can see, like, all throughout the silver axes, you can see there's just blue on the handles of the axes and inside the axes that wasn't painted. You know, that didn't have that attention to detail. And then you click the next picture and you get this, where someone has painted it in the normal Alpha Legion metallic scheme. So there's something funky going on with the website here, why you would have this sort of aqua, just teal blue, and then versus this metallic blue right next to it. The two are just sort of looking at each other across the hallway. I'm you, but better. I just very, very odd to me. And even this isn't the greatest version of it painted. Again, probably from someone's army, but I'm not trying to shame them. There is nothing wrong with the level of quality of painting here. It's just interesting to see that this is their promotional pictures on the website. Now, that's a long-winded way of me basically coming back to the point of these are actually very nice-looking miniatures. And funny enough, they don't look as good as they should, just because the painting could be a little bit better. And I know what they can look like when they've been really, really well painted. So it's not that these are a bad paint job, it's just not as good as they deserve as a showcase on the website, and it lets them down because I can't show you how good these models really look. But they are perfect. They are perfect Alpha Legion Terminators. What would I change about them? I just don't like the heavy conversion beamer in the squad. That's it. Change the heavy conversion beamer out to some other weapon, like a multi-melter, or a Volkite Culverin would have been so cool in this squad. Instead, they went with the Volkite Sakers or whatever they are on the Contempor. It would have been a better choice in here, I think. But the conversion beamer is neat in that it speaks to the Alpha Legion having sort of hidden tech from others, but it feels like the sort of heavy weapon a conversion beamer should be on something like on an Iron Hands, right? They seem like the guys who should have had a conversion beamer or a graviton cannon, you know, something like that, as opposed to this. But on the whole, really, really gorgeous miniatures over here in the Alpha Legion. And you can see a whole bunch of 3D printing striations throughout this resin cast. So, yep, resin printing will never take over from Games Workshop. Then we get to the Pror. Another lovely model, and I personally converted one up into a White Scars Pror. So, because of the scales and that, it very much looks like the scales of like a dragon or a serpent. So by just removing the tiny, tiny little bits of Alpha Legion iconography, like on the leg and the A in the middle of the chest, and not using that helmet and shoulder pads, you end up with a really, really nice White Scars Pror. So for those who want to give it a go, that's a nice, simple conversion you can pick. Also, probably a really good time for you to mention, because of the Alpha Legion's shenanigans, this is one of the few legions where you can just outright use another legion's console, complete with markings, and get away with it, because they can be basically spy forces. Raptor Imperialis, over on Instagram, a friend of mine, he has a really, really nice set of miniatures he's done, where they are chipped, and in that chipping you can see this metallic blue shining through their regular armor. And those particular miniatures, with that sort of, hinting at these are not what they seem on the surface, based on some artwork that we got in Book 8. Yeah, that's really, really nice look, and I think should be emulated. As for the design here, yep, helmet is awesome. Clearly a Pror. It's got fancier crest, very much like the Primarch's helmet. The use of the scales is there. It's not over the top, which is great. And the sword and scabbard style, I like to call this sort of sword that's very common amongst the Alpha Legion. I like to call that Orcrist, after Thorin Oakenshield's sword from The Hobbit, because that's what it looks like. Is that sort of cleaver, has very much the same sort of elvish curves on it, and yeah, I can't think of a better way to describe it than that is Orcrist. Which, yeah. Then we get to Exodus. So Exodus is he's here, he's technically not, but technically is a special character. You can take multiple Exodus. Therefore, I don't consider him a special character. Really weird in that he seems to have this bolt-action rifle with a really high-up mounted receiver, but also has like a bolt gun mag in the bottom. Basically, we don't know what's going on here, but he has a 50 cal rifle. Upscaled to a Marine, so I guess it's probably like an 80 caliber, 100 caliber rifle. You know, he's shooting Bushmaster cannon, 20mm rounds at enemies. Who knows, right? But this is another win. This is a gorgeous model and works perfectly, basically, for the force he's designed for. If I was fishing for things I didn't like on the model, I guess he could be more simplistic in the armor, because he is a sniper, he doesn't need the fancy armor. It's not really an issue. I guess maybe the grip on the weapon, on this sort of AK-looking 50 cal thing that he's got, doesn't need that big long grip. Maybe a rail system like a Primaris Tactical thing or a bipod would have been a good choice, but whatever. Model's gorgeous. Happy to use one in Alpha Legion Force. Then we get to the Alpha Legion Terminator Praetor. So, yeah, here we have a miniature that suits the look of the Linnaean Terminators to a T. Also armed with the right armor, the right sort of weapon, has a Volkite just like the rest of the squad does. Also has his own Orcrist sword, but slightly more going on with the shoulder pads and the helmet than the Linnaean Terminators back here do. You know, they've got the scales on the chests and the little Hydra symbol, but that's about it. Whereas this guy has the Hydra symbol and chains going across the chest. And, you know, he is clearly similar, but different enough that the two look perfect together, and is the perfect sort of character to have because he can go into the elite unit without changing the way that their rules work on the tabletop, which can't be said for characters like, say, the Imperial Fist's Praetor in the Tartarus armor, who's a gorgeous miniature, especially the older version that's out of production now, swinging the sword on the sort of backswing. That guy, you know, doesn't go in with Huskarls, for instance. Whereas this, not a problem here. You know, or the Blood Angels, you've got another Tartarus Terminator character, and yet your Special Legion Terminators in Cataphracti armor. You know, it's not great when they do that. And especially when it's something like the Dark Angels, where, okay, you've got a Cataphracti character, but the unit he joins in a Circle Knight Cenobium are 10 times more blinged out than he is. And it doesn't work. The Alpha Legion, the aesthetic's just perfect. Then we get to Armilius Dynat, who is the true special character, the Harrow Master. And, yep, he is one of the early character series. And just to think, the Alpha Legion, no offense, you got a character series model with a display base who is just gorgeous. And the Thousand Sons didn't get Araman. In fact, the Thousand Sons haven't got an Araman for 30k still. I will die on that hill. The model they have got is not Araman. That is generic sorcerer number 4 and needs to be re-sculpted by an actual decent resin sculptor. I'm sorry. Or in plastic. I'd be fine with the plastic one if it was gorgeous. But anyway, this model. This is gorgeous. Yep, still wielding Orcrist, so that design philosophy carries over, but the scales on the chest, the use of the Hydra iconography, these Alpha Legion shoulder pads are right up there with the Raven Guard Mark 6 in the gorgeous factor. They're just beautiful. Just great use of an existing concept. You know, here is this studded shoulder pad. Hey, let's put some trim on it, and let's do something interesting with the trim. Let's give it some organic curves, you know, similar to the sword, or like the swooshing scales of a dragon, or Hydra. Yep, great. And all of the weapons have this twisting scale grip. Both the sword has it, and the hammer has it. Cool. And who would have picked a thunder hammer as a weapon of choice for the Alpha Legion? Yes, swords, you could see maybe a trident, you know, tridents in the ocean, and hydras, you know, there's a lot of symbolism in there. But the thunder hammer? No, I wouldn't have picked it. And you know what? It works, and it looks gorgeous with the twin-headed hydras curling around the hammerhead. And even the backpack, this sort of communication-style backpack he has, that again speaks to, hey, this character is, you know, he's more than he just looks like on the surface. This guy is command and control. This is like a Master of Signals meets a Praetor, you know, which is very Raven Guard and very Alpha Legion. They're those sort of legions that are closer to modern day tactics and combat than other legions, and another win for this model range. And then lastly, Alfarius, the smallest and probably least impressive Primarch base. Even Angron's base has more stuff going on, but, well, I have one of these, and I think it's gorgeous. I absolutely adore what they did with this particular model. I did my Alfarius skewering a Raven Guard, I believe it was on the base, not a Space Wolf. But I guess Space Wolf works for the Battle of the Alaxes Nebula, only that took place on spaceships in the Alaxes Nebula, not on some rocks. But hey, I'm sure the Alpha Legion fought some Space Wolves on some rocks at some point. The only Primarch who doesn't have a bare head option, only has a helmet option, and was the first Primarch introduced with a helmet. Something that's become sort of, I was going to say semi-common since then, but it really hasn't. The only one who really has got a helmet is the Lion. But, no, looks great. The only thing I would say about it is I wish the spear looked a little bit more Necron. Because the way it's really described and its original rules were pretty much identical to Necron war scythes. Yeah, he's using a Necron weapon, so I wish it looked a little bit more like that. I'm fine with the blade being more stylized and looking Alpha Legion. It's a beautiful blade design. But I wish maybe something in the haft or the grips on this looked just a smidgen more Necron. You know, I think it would have been maybe with like 3 of those little vents or something coming in on the haft here. That's about it. If I had to pick a flaw, that's it. The rest of this model is gorgeous. I did sort of inverse scheme to this where I used a lot more greens than blues on my one. And I think it looked better for it, but that's of course my personal opinion. And again, opinions vary. But this one is overloaded with blue, which is not a bad thing, but all the green is on the weapons, and I think it needed a bit more greens in the armor for a little bit more tone and color shift. But otherwise, absolutely gorgeous model. And I mean, I can kind of see where they were heading with the Mark 6 helmet upgrades, having all these lines and trim in that Alfarius' helmet kind of does, but it works on Alfarius because he is so busy and so stylized, and it draws away from all the scales on the body. It doesn't work anywhere near as well on these Mark 6 Marines. They needed something closer to maybe like Exodus, where he's got the trim with like just the tiny little bits of silver, or the filigree, or this character here who has, again, very, very minimalistic silver. You know, it's an accent edge of trim just around the face. It's like if your Praetor has less going on with their helmet than what you're trying to do on your basic infantry, you've probably failed in your design aesthetic because you're now diverging. But anyway, that's it. That's the Alpha Legion range and the last of the Astartes. But we're going to go on from here to the Custodes, I think, in the next video, keeping in line with what is the most closest to Marines, and we'll start to diverge from there. But I think the Alpha Legion range is pretty much everything is a win except for these new helmet upgrades, which I just wouldn't wish upon anyone. I don't think they're worth it. But everything else is just gorgeous. And this is the only range I can say that for. Most ranges have several models where they've got things that are just kind of stinkers along the way. Not here. Not at all. This is just the perfect range with a consistent continuity of style and design throughout. And they knocked it out of the park. Maybe that's because almost everything in this range is a result of Book 3 of the Horus Heresy, which is not what can be said for many ranges that came after, that have been spread out over many years. The only stuff that's kind of new is, well, Exodus was last year, late last year, and the 2 Praetors were the year before that. But that's really the year before that, the year before that even, actually. I think they were possibly at the start of the lockdown was the Alpha Legion Praetors, if not before the lockdowns. So it goes to show, like, whoever did Exodus, yeah, they tapped into the stylistic choices perfectly. But if it would shock me if the same person did the helmet upgrades, because they don't look anywhere near as good as this design does. But anyway, what are your thoughts? Leave them with me in the comments below. I'm Mac with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.